When I broke into tech sales, I left a stable engineering career to actually make less money right out of the gate. Now, I'm in a fortunate position to where now I'm making more and I very much enjoy the career, but I want to make a video about the brutal reality of the career because I think a lot of people right now are going into it rather naively or have rosy expectations around what that career can provide. And don't get me wrong, those positive outcomes are definitely possible, but it's not across the board. And I think a lot of people right now think that just breaking in, all of your problems are going to solve itself. And I think if you take a step back and actually approach the career the right way, you're really gonna set yourself up long-term for success, where most people find the exponential return on the careers between years 5 and 10. So there's 3 main things that I wanna bring up today, and it certainly starts around the last thing that I mentioned, which is the time it takes to actually have a lot of success in tech sales. Now, don't get me wrong, I've worked with people that are breaking in through our bootcamp that have come from other careers that weren't making what I was making as an engineer, which was a strong salary, nothing insane, right? But I was very comfortable as an engineer. I left to make a little bit less money, certainly a lot less when it comes to the guaranteed base salary versus the commission. But again, I think I see a lot of people out there touting 500K, touting 300, 400K, right? In years 1 or 2. And I don't think that that's a realistic expectation going in. Maybe the top 3 to 5% can achieve that if they're at the right company at the right time, and more power to the people that have. Don't get me wrong. But you'll find the further you get into this, it's easy to go on forums and get caught up in a Reddit sales post where someone's talking about a 100K commission check that they made and how great the career is, right? In reality, it's going to take a while to get to that point. And that's where I think so many people fall short, is they have this expectation they're gonna make 100K in year 1 because you've got all this energy and enthusiasm. And the second that you don't make that, this career now sucks. It's your fault. And you've set yourself up to fail. Whereas otherwise, if you had come in with a 5-year game plan to get to an enterprise account executive role or to get to a management type of role, you'd be in a much better position if you're not directly attached to the financial outcome, especially in maybe the first year or 2, maybe even 3. And somewhat related, in my second major point here, is that oftentimes the salespeople that you're hearing from making the most money are a very select few. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of reps that don't make content, but even at your happy hours, right? Like, why would I go and talk about my sales career and how awesome it is if I'm not making money? But conversely, like in my case, I have to say, when I left engineering and had my first breakout year financially in tech sales, it was really tempting to go and talk about that outcome. And obviously I started making content, but even if you followed my content, I've been very intentional about not really talking about my direct income that often on the channel. And the reason being because when I left engineering, I had already gotten a little bit of exposure to tech sales in my engineering role. And I knew that it was going to be that 5 to 10 year play. And I got into tech sales because I definitely wanted the financial upside, but I didn't have unrealistic expectations, and I knew that that would take a while to get there. Additionally, for me, when I saw tech sales as an opportunity, it was a great opportunity for me to get exposure to the business side of the tech world. And now I'm coming up on a decade of experience in tech. And I've got a valuable perspective because I've both been a frontline in the trenches engineer, and I've also sold at basically every level of sales possible. That experience over time has become very valuable and compounded. But again, there were many years as an engineer. There were years, the first year or 2 in my career in tech sales, where I was constantly going and constantly wanting to make more. And I was using that as a healthy motivator. And I think if you're coming in and seeing all these people that are making 300, 400, 500K, and you think that that's gonna happen in year 1 or 2, you're only setting yourself up to be disappointed and not have success when you otherwise could have stuck with it and gotten to that point. Lastly, on the second point, again, I don't wanna hate on the people that have done well for themselves, both in their tech sales job and online and whatever ventures they may have. But I also see a lot of people that are in the tech sales world or in the tech world talking about how much money they make, and they're maybe not disclosing how much of that was their actual job versus their online income. And more power to them. I know there's a lot of people that have shown their W-2 and verified their income. Absolutely, more power to them, right? But I think there's also a lot of things that I'm seeing where people are saying, yeah, I make 300K in year 1 or year 2, or now multi-millionaire or things of this nature. And a lot of that, to their credit, they put in the work to break into the industry, but they also haven't gone all the way up in their career to the highest levels of tech sales. The person that's making that kind of money in their day job was definitely in their career for more than like 2 to 3 years at a time. Lastly, I just say, not every tech sales job is created equal. And this is a big one for me that I think a lot of people are so excited to break in. They just want to get a job and they'll take the first thing they get, or they'll interview at tons of companies and not realize that maybe some of the companies they're interviewing for aren't setting them up for success long term. And what I mean is simple things like, obviously, if a company wants you to make 150 to 300 cold calls a day, or they don't have any SDRs that have gone on to become account executives, or maybe if you look at the average tenure of an SDR, they don't even have that many people that have been there for longer than a year at a time. These are really common red flags for tech sales companies. And just because you break into a tech sales company, again, get your foot in the door. I encourage you to find a good company. But if you just break into a tech sales company, that means a lot of things. Are you selling a software platform for like HR people or accountants or some other industry? And that's fine. But just know that in going to that company, you're kind of putting a box around yourself in terms of the types of tech you can sell long term. And if you're not at a great or reputable company, one, you're not going to get the training you need to actually become good at the profession, or it's going to take a lot more training and commitment on your own terms to actually try and find some success. And two, if you ultimately decide long term that you want to change companies or you want to break into a different industry, if you're not at a decent company or in the same space that other companies are, it's really difficult to have a compelling case to break into that company. And so that's all I'd say, is not everything is created equal. And yes, if you're actively looking at tech sales, like definitely get your foot in the door. But I work with a lot of people breaking in through our bootcamp, through coaching, etc. And I see a lot of them so anxious to get their foot in the door, where otherwise if they had taken maybe a week longer to do a lot of research, to really prioritize really great companies, to really perfect their messaging and really go out of their way to connect with managers, etc. at top companies, they would have gotten much better results and landed at much better companies right out of the gate. So again, I'm not trying to be a downer. I'm very fortunate to be in my career, and I've benefited a lot from the rapid progression that I experienced early in my sales career. But again, a lot of that too was the exposure I had as an engineer. I was able to come in and be very effective because I had a lot of, I would say, pseudo training almost in my engineering role of how to support a sales team in a customer facing interaction. And again, it's why I don't really talk about my income that much, because I really enjoy this career. Even if I'm not in tech sales for the entirety of my life, this has given me a lot of experiences and a lot of perspective to go out and, as an example, start my own thing right here with this channel and beyond. And so again, I don't want to discourage you, but I would just recap more than anything. If you have false expectations, or you have this like really hype, excited thing for maybe a month or two where you're going to break in, you're going to make 100K. I mean, it's definitely possible, right? But really, what is 100K today versus sticking it out for 5 years and being in a position where you can make 300 or 400 in a year? And that's what I think so many people get lost in. They're so focused on this arbitrary number that doesn't really mean anything other than giving you an excuse to tell your friends that you made 6 figures in a year. Whereas if you take year one, maybe even year two, and you don't quite cross that 100K mark, but you stick through it, you get promoted in year 3, you change companies in year 4 or year 5, and now you're making that 250, 300 mark. Whereas you were so focused and so narrowly focused on making 100K, when it didn't happen, you just left the career after a year and a half because you're like, you know what, this isn't what I thought. When otherwise, if you had had that longer term mindset, if you had planned out in your career to at least do it for 5 years and see what happened, you would have had so much more upside and also made it so much further than so many people that start as an SDR do. So I hope that helps give you perspective. And again, I'm not saying don't go after the career. I still think it's a great career path. Have those realistic expectations, and it's only going to help you as you progress in your career. If you have any questions, definitely fire away below. Happy to answer them and continue the conversation there. But appreciate the time as always, and we'll see you next week.